welcome to, wow, I can't speak today. I just can't speak. That's a great way to start a show. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Haskin Cast podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin. I am here with a very special lady. We're actually starting like way late because we've had such a good time talking. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun for all of us. Let's welcome Noopy to the show. Noopy, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
I've been having such a fun time talking to you. I could be doing this all day.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Well, before we get into all the things, let me ask you, how did you end up with the name Noopy?
Well, my father was very big on nicknames, and he loved, and my real name happens to be Georgiana. So, but he wasn't going to call me Georgiana. And nose in our family, or my father always thought that my nose was a little noop. He says, "Oh, you got a little noop." So I would constantly, when I would eat as a kid or whatever, a baby, I'd get stuff all over my nose. And he'd say, "Oh, you got stuff on your noop. Oh, you got stuff. Oh, nooper." And it went nooper. Then it eventually became Noopy. And when somebody questions me, they go, "Oh, no, you mean Snoopy?" No, take the S off and you got it.
Well, it's definitely better than some things that I've been called over the years.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I'm so excited about this project that you've been working on. If I have my dates right, it's coming out August 15th. It is a wonderful new collection of music that's never been heard before by the wonderful Rosemary. Of course, if you don't know her as Sally Rogers from the Dick Van Dyke Show, her many appearances on Hollywood Squares, which I think is probably where I know her from the best, because I used to watch that all the time.
A lot of people, yeah.
Or the stage. This woman was everywhere. She was such a presence. I mean, she really brought a certain energy to anything that she did. And I think that's what I really loved most about her, aside from her obvious talent. But she was your mom.
She was my mom.
And you're no stranger to Las Vegas. And I did not know this until I got all the information over, but she was the actual first person to ever have a residency in Las Vegas over at the Tropicana, which is one of the
the Flamingo.
The Flamingo, one of the only older hotels still standing here in Vegas.
It was the first one. It was the first one, and Bugsy Siegel got this vision that he was going to build this very fancy hotel in the middle of a desert. There was nothing around. It was desert.
Yeah.
And it was his dream to build this hotel. And he had seen her because she had been a nightclub performer at that point. Mm-hmm. And he wanted her to play. And so the opening was her and Jimmy Durante and Xavier Cugat. And they flew in a bunch of stars and everything for the opening, and it was grand. And everybody was in tuxedos, and it was terrific and all that. And then the next day, everybody went home. So my mother used to say, "You haven't lived till you've seen Jimmy Durante walk out and work to 12 people," because the locals weren't sure what the heck. I mean, what do we do with this place?
Right.
And so it kind of started from there. Peter Marshall, who narrates on my mother's documentary, Wait for Your Laugh, he played Vegas, and he said at the time that he played it, there was only one cab driver. And he said his name was Louis. I'll never forget that. And he said, and there was like 2 hotels, Golden Nugget, maybe, I think was one. Mm-hmm. But he said that was it. And of course it was run by the mob. So right. if you played Vegas, you were working for the mob. But every celebrity and every person that ever worked Vegas loved it because the mob treated them like gold.
Yeah, they appreciate it because they brought in the money and they brought in the visitors.
Well, yeah. And but the entertainers got treated so beautifully that they didn't want to turn it down. The money was good.
Yeah.
And and they absolutely loved it. So if you could play Vegas, you played Vegas as much as you could. And she used to get calls from whomever saying, okay, we want you to play at the Sands, we want you to play at the Sahara, we want you to play at the Riviera. And so my youth, a lot of it was spent in Vegas because that's where she worked.
Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine what it was like to watch the city grow and evolve over those trips out here.
Well, one of the things that she used to do, which I'm telling you, the people are clamoring for now. Every time she would go to Vegas, she loved to take movies with her movie camera.
Mm-hmm.
She would have somebody drive her. She'd sit in the car and she'd drive down the strip. I've got pictures. We have movies of the Vegas Strip. When she would drive down there, you'd see one hotel and then you'd see desert. You'd see one hotel. And and literally you would look at the back of the Flamingo and you'd see this beautiful hotel and then desert here. I mean, totally nothing.
Yeah.
And it was a thing that every time she was smart enough to realize that she knew that this was probably going to take off.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, I'm going to take, every time I play, I'm going to drive down the strip and I'm going to take 8mm film at that time
Mm-hmm.
of the strip. And that's what she did. And those pictures are phenomenal.
Oh, I can only imagine. I mean, there's so many different like groups on Facebook that are about vintage Vegas, and they'll post pictures. Mm-hmm. And I'm amazed at the little bits of things that I see. I can't imagine every time you come back to town after 4 or 5 months, all of a sudden there's another hotel, or Caesar's Palace has built a speedway, which they had before they changed it to the Forum Shops. And I mean, the evolution of this town is probably one of the craziest of any place in the country.
It's the only thing that somebody came to her once, and the only thing that didn't work in Vegas, she was not a good person to buy stock in anything, because usually the stock went, but so she said, oh, I bought stock in Vegas. I said, what'd you buy? The Las Vegas racetrack for horses.
Right.
Die to death.
Oh man.
Die to death. But and Maury, who was very smart, Maury Amsterdam, who of course she worked with on Dick Van Dyke. Mm-hmm. Maury was smart. Maury said, I'm going to buy some land over here. And I think he bought the land across the street from the Sahara. It later became Sahara, and it was an empty lot forever. Mm-hmm. For a while. And then, because one of the many times that I would go to Vegas, I would look and I'd go, no, the lot's still there.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to secure the land, to build something on it. That's, especially of the magnitude that they were starting to build even back then.
Sure.
That's a lot of money.
It was, but something, it became, look at what it is now. The last time I think she actually saw Vegas was maybe 10, 15 years ago, if not more. Mm. And we were flying in, and I said to her, Mother, look outside. Look at and of course, all the houses, all the tile houses that are everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
And she went, that's Vegas? I said, yeah, Mom, that's Vegas. Mm-hmm. Holy Toledo. And I mean, I drove her by the Luxor and all this stuff, and she went, are you kidding me? Yeah. And she said, oh my God, Bugsy has to be spinning in his grave.
Well, I think it's the classic, like anything else that's, male dominated, is the one-upsmanship. Oh, you built that kind of hotel? Fine, I'll build a pyramid hotel, and then you're going to do that. Fine, I'll do this.
Yeah, true.
Well, I just want to ask you one more question about that. I wonder what her act was like. Was it kind of like the lounge act, where she, wears the long dress, lays across the piano, goes out and works the crowd a little bit kind of act, or what was she doing?
No, she never played the lounge in Vegas. It was always the main room. Never. Okay. She at that point in her life, she had left this quote. She had started to change her act to where she was singing, but she was also doing comedy.
Hmm.
She was actually, when she first started, she was a singer that kind of did comedy. Then she became later a comedian who sings.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
you know, the mob, of course, knew what she could do, and that's why she was booked
Right.
immediately. I mean, if you're going to open up Vegas, you're going to open up with her.
Yeah.
And so her act at that point basically was I mean, she still sang. She's a great singer, which you're going to hear on this collection. She's a fabulous singer. I'm telling you, some of these things blew me out of the water. But anyway, um, so she was usually the opening act for somebody that was bigger or something, you know. And
So like a Dean Martin or Sammy Davis Jr.,
yeah,
somebody like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
well, yeah, you know, it was who whom whomever was big at the time.
Mhm.
And of course, you know, Frank, Dean, all that stuff was still going, but there were other people. There were a lot of singers
Mhm.
that were playing. Rosemary Clooney, I think, sang in Vegas, and of course, all the male singers. So they would book her as the opening act, and then a male singer, whoever was the, you know, and I don't know, Andy Williams or somebody like that, that was big at the time.
Right.
So she was the opening act. And if the mob called her and said, okay, we want you to be an opening act for whomever, she went, okay, I'm there. And then
Yeah.
eventually when the nightclub thing started to kind of die down, then she knew she had to get into television.
Mhm.
She was always progressing. She was always going forward,
Mhm.
never ever backwards.
Yeah, it
And
seems like she was always doing something. Like she didn't really sit
she never
idle a whole
stopped.
lot. Yeah.
She never stopped. The only time she stopped was after my father passed away, and she went into a major depression after that, because they had a marvelous marriage. They had a beautiful marriage,
Mhm.
and which is also depicted in her film. I mean, I saw women cry during that film. I mean, it's tremendous. And that was the only time that she really considered, you know, she really didn't want to work. But then she was a single mother. She had me. She had our house,
Mhm.
and she said, "No, I'm gonna keep working." Uh, for that reason, but also she loved it. She
Mhm.
missed it.
Yeah.
It was so in her. I mean, literally, she worked up to like 91.
Wow.
She did a voiceover for a cartoon at 91. So I mean, she never stopped. It was just, I say in the film, I said it's almost like a drug.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
she had to keep doing this.
Well, don't you think though, when in general, when people retire from their whatever their job is, whether they're, working in a factory or mortgage company, whatever it is, when they stop working, unless they have something that they've been wanting to do, a hobby or something, they kind of lose their sense of purpose.
They do. And she never ever did.
Mhm.
I mean, she after Dick Van Dyke was only 5 years of her life.
Yeah.
Of the span of things, it's really not that much.
Mhm.
And a lot of people didn't realize that the residuals that were paid back then are not the same way that they are now.
Right.
And so after 1967, she never made a dime off that show.
Mhm.
So she had to work. She
Yeah.
had she had no income. So that's when she started to do all these different shows. And I had a friend tell me a couple of days ago, "Oh, I saw your mother on Adam 12." Oh, Lord. And she did like 4 or 5 SWATs shows. She
Mhm.
did 3, 4 monkeys. It's a huge fan base with the monkeys, by the way.
Oh
They're
yeah.
still, I mean, it's amazing what's out there.
Mhm.
And so she started to do all these sitcoms, and just kept going. I don't know how many love. In fact, I just got a thing the other day. I think she did 10 Love Boats. I don't know.
That many?
I mean, I got the
Wow.
list, but and I got one the other day. Somebody was asking me, well, she did all these shows. And I said, yeah. I said, she did a show called Alf way back when, which was about,
The Alien?
and yeah, exactly. The Alien.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
I
And
don't
so
remember that.
yeah, so she actually did an Alf, and I got a residual for it the other day, 38 cents. So I said, I want
Wow.
everybody to know how rich I'm going to get on this thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy because they'll mail out checks for zero.
Oh,
You know.
I did get one when we were shooting the film, and of course, because we had, we were all shooting it on a wing and a prayer, because and we wound up having to do a Kickstarter program because we didn't have the money.
Yeah.
We didn't have the amount of money that was needed to make a film.
I'm
And
shocked with those residual checks coming in.
so we had one check came in, and Jason, the producer director of the film, he said, can I see how much that one is? I said, here, have at it. I gave him the envelope, and he opened it up. It was for 1 cent. And he said, can I have this? I'm going to frame it and put it in my office. I said, Jason, you can have that. That's my gift to you for all the work you've done. So
That was nice of you not to charge him a penny.
yeah, right. I said, it cost him more to mail it.
Well, that's just it. It just makes no sense. And of course, nowadays everything could be done digitally, through transfers and all that. And you can email a statement. It would actually cost you nothing to do it. But I
Well,
find
I've
it
been hacked
interesting.
about 4 times. So
Oh, wow.
I'm very leery about it, including
Yeah.
right after my mother passed away, somebody managed to get into our joint checking account.
Wow.
And because I had put money in there for the funeral and the expenses and all of that.
Mhm.
And it was obviously an inside job, whatever, but 20 all of a sudden I'm minus $25,000.
But you got it back though, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
good.
eventually got
Okay.
it back, but I wanted to nail that guy.
Oh, yeah. Were you able to find out who it was?
No, I wound up going to the cops, and they said, well, if it's under 30, or we don't do it. And I said, no, I'm going to tell you who she was, and you guys are going to do it, or else I'm going to the press.
Mhm.
And so all of a sudden I had a detective, and who believe I couldn't make this name up, honest to God, if I tried. Detective Bravo.
No.
I swear to God, I don't, I, I can't even say, he was a nice guy. He got so excited when I think one of the tabloids called him.
Mhm.
And he goes, oh, I hope I said the right thing. I said, no, you're fine. I said, I want you to nail this guy. I don't want, and my assistant, we wound up getting the guy's address, phone number, this and that. He had an operation in some place in California, and I called up Detective Bravo, and I said, it was in San Bernardino territory, it wasn't in LA County. And I said, here's his address. Go knock on the door. And he said, it's out of our jurisdiction because it's it just got from there. He found a videotape at one bank of the wife trying to cash she forged my signature. It just, so I get very leery about doing anything online, I'll be honest,
I don't blame you. Yeah.
because all of a sudden I'll get a thing saying, did you make this purchase for, and I go, again.
Mhm.
So and how many times can you change passwords?
Right.
Give me a break. So
And why
anyway,
should we have to? I mean, you just shouldn't. Well,
so
that's
so there's a couple of things that I have sent direct, but I have the residuals come in checks, so I have them, and I have a good record of them instead of them going out into cyberspace somewhere.
right.
So even if they're 38 cents and I take them to the bank, and the guy will look at me and I go, no, I'm not going to let them keep this.
Yeah.
I'm cashing this sucker. So
Sure. Yeah.
he
Well,
goes, might as well. I said,
right.
might
It's
as well.
deserved. When I get my money from my 0.0007 cent play on Spotify, I'll
Yeah,
take it. you
exactly.
know?
No,
Yeah.
don't, you don't turn it down. And but what's really interesting now that we're talking about this is that on Friends, my mother did a thing where they just have her up on the TV screen for maybe 3 seconds.
Mhm.
And it's when both guys are in the chairs and they lean back in the chairs and they turn on the TV and her face comes up and they go, whoa, like that. That's it. I get more from that than anything. And
Ugh.
because Friends is, but it's 1-2 seconds maybe. And then you got to think, my God, how much are those kids making? Holy Toledo. If I'm getting money for 1 second,
Mhm.
it's like, wow. I mean, grant you, okay, her face was used, they had to pay for it, blah, blah, blah. But I said, anybody that did Friends is holy Toledo.
And she would be on an entire episode of The Love Boat, but get a bigger check for 3 seconds on Friends. It's really crazy how licensing and that kind of stuff works. It's
True.
all in the negotiation. It's all about the status of the show. I mean, Friends was one of the highest rated shows ever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they had the budget to do pretty much whatever they wanted, you
Well,
know?
interesting. Marta Kaufman, who executive produced Friends and wrote Friends,
Mm.
contacted us after the documentary was, and so she said, if it wasn't for the character of Sally Rogers being a writer on Dick Van Dyke and making the same salary as the guys and everything, because she was actually the first. Later on came Marlo Thomas and Mary's show.
Yeah.
But she was actually the first to be on the same level as men in that office. And Marta Kaufman told us, I just wish she'd have told us sooner, but she said, it's because of your mother that I became a writer.
That's
And
amazing.
that is an absolute true story. And she said, I was always a huge fan of your mother's. And when I saw her and saw Sally being a writer and being a part of the guys and making the same thing, she said, that's what I wanted to be. And she later on became executive producer and a writer on Friends. There you go.
I was just having coffee this morning with a dear friend of mine who's a very talented vocalist, and she does a lot of work on video games and films and stuff. But she's not a performer. So I
Mhm.
told her, I said, one of the hardest things for us is that we work behind the scenes. We don't get to see people enjoy what we do, but
Mhm.
always know that anytime somebody could be inspired by what you do. So you always do, your best. And I love that. I love that you found that out.
Well, we
Uh,
actually, Marta was one, Jane Lynch is the other.
wow.
Jane Lynch actually mentions my mother in her act. I guess she had an act,
Mhm.
and she thanks my mother in her act every night.
That's
And then
awesome.
the other one was Paula Poundstone.
Really?
Paula Poundstone, years ago, my mother and I were at some function, I think at the Century Plaza, and we walked out to get into the car, and Paula Poundstone's outside like a fan, like behind the barricades.
Mhm.
And I looked and I said, that's Paula Poundstone. And she was there. She had gotten a copy of a Dick Van Dyke Show script. I don't know how she got it or anything, but she had it in her hand. And I walked and I looked, and so she said, can I talk to your mother? I said, yeah. So I went and I got her and I brought her over, and she said, I cannot tell you, would you please sign my script? And my mother, who never refused an autograph, ever, ever, she said, sure. And so she said, I have to tell you what a mark you made on me and how you and how you showed me that women could do and not didn't have to step down, could be as equal as anybody.
Yeah.
And I stood right there and saw it. And so Paula Poundstone to this day will talk about my mother, to this very day, and so will Jane Lynch.
I love that. I mean, it was such a different time back then. I mean, we're still dealing with some of those issues, which just boggles my mind. But yeah, she was really the first one that kind of said, "Hey, we don't have to have it the way it is."
No, and believe me, that's all due to Carl Reiner's writing also.
Sure,
But
yeah.
and you know, one of the things that she said when she says it on the film, she says, I was the first one to have a single name. She said, because all her marquees of any place that she ever played said Rose Marie. That's it. She said later on it became Liza and Cher and Madonna and
Sure,
all of
yeah.
those, but she took great pride in saying I was the first.
I like that.
It's true.
Well, before we get into the CD, which I want to talk to you a little about, obviously, I just have one other question for you because
Sure.
I'm really curious about this. You know, when Alice Narngrim was on the show, we talked a little bit about her time on game shows. Did your mom, was the Hollywood Square something that she looked forward to doing? Was that a
Oh,
fun thing, or
absolutely.
yeah?
Well, you know, one of the things that that she didn't want to work that much after my father passed away. And there's a song on here that I'll briefly tell you that basic story, but she had gotten a call to do Hollywood Squares, and they were going to start off, and it was going to be a new show, and she had gotten the call, and they said, would you consider doing Hollywood Squares, doing this show, Squares, with this, you know. They went through one host the first time, he didn't work out, and then they got Peter, and he was the one.
Great, yeah.
It was perfect. But she thought about it and she said, yeah, that'll be good because I don't have to sing, I don't have to perform, I don't have to do any of that, and I can play. And she loved to play games anyway. She loved game playing. This she did password and all of them, you know. But yeah, she goes, I can do that. I can do that. I think that would be good for me. And they used to do 5 shows in one day. And
Wow. Well, I mean, and 90% of the time you're not doing anything.
Well, exactly. And yeah, quick story about Hollywood Squares. I was picking her up at the airport one day, and she was walking out, and behind her was Helen Hayes. Well, Helen Hayes is a legend in the theater. She's the first lady of theater. She's like God in the theater. And I'm in the car and I look and I see Helen Hayes behind her. And I went, my God, I'm thinking to myself, that's Helen Hayes. And she walks out. She opens the door. She goes, oh, Noopy, I want you to meet Helen Hayes. And I go, yeah, I know who she is. And Helen Hayes sticks her head into the car and says, have to tell you, I watch your mother every day on Hollywood Squares. I would never miss it. I think it's great. I just adore her. And I would never miss a Hollywood Squares.
Oh.
And I'm thinking to myself, Helen Hayes watches Hollywood Squares? It wasn't registering in my head. So then she leaves, we get in the car, and I guess the look on my face must have been priceless because my mother looked over at me and she goes, so what do you think of that? And I said, Helen Hayes watches Hollywood Squares. The first lady of theater, Shakespeare, this, that, she's watching Hollywood Squares.
Sure.
And I cannot tell you how many times my mother would bring up that story. She go, oh, you should have seen Noopy's face when she saw Helen Hayes. And I went, I was flabbergasted. I truly was. I thought, oh my God,
Well, game shows like that were so new and different and exciting. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people tuned into those
You
because
know,
it was,
celebrities to this day watch now with all of the channels out there, between the older Cozy TV and all of those, and Nick at Night and all of those, all of that is a resurgence
oh
of
yeah,
the way television used to be, because television now is not that entertaining. It's morbid, it's depressing.
yeah,
And
it really is.
so people say, I'm not going to watch this. I'm going to watch a game show. And
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many people tell me, "Oh, I saw your mother on Password the other night. I saw your
Mhm.
mother on," and I go, "Oh, but I can see why, because of everything in the world, you got to have something that's going to take you away,
Yeah.
and I always say, I don't want to go see something that's going to lecture me or tell me how to think or tell me what to do. I'm still my own person.
Yeah,
So
we've got social media for that. Uh,
exactly.
but
Yes,
you
we
know,
do.
like when I'm having dinner and I take a break from working, I'll pull up some old Hollywood Squares or some Match Game. I mean, I grew up in the era of game shows being the thing. So for me, that's kind of like comfort food for my brain.
Yeah, I did too. I grew up with game shows, and people still watch, Jeopardy, but they get upset. I mean, when Alex passed away, that Jeopardy was never the same as far as I'm
No,
concerned.
no, but it makes too much money to stop. So of course,
Yeah.
we'll just
Yeah.
keep it going. Well, and I've heard that Pat Sajak is going to retire from Wheel of Fortune.
I heard
So
that.
that
I
should be
heard that.
interesting too to
I
see what
think they're
happens.
going to get what's his face from American Idol. The host. The host.
Simon? Howie?
No, 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 no.
Oh,
Um,
American Idol. I don't know. I haven't watched that in a
you
long
know who I
time.
mean. God, he's everywhere. He's on New Year's Eve too.
Oh,
I'm
I
blank on
can
his
picture him. Yeah, he was doing, I
I'm
think
blank on his name too.
the
I
talk
swear.
show with Kelly for a
Yes.
while. Yeah.
Kelly Ripa, yes.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about, but his name is just, it
That
never
is
comes to me when I'm doing an interview. I
I
can never
know, I
grasp the
know.
name.
My brain I'm old, so my
Well,
my brain goes south
you and
sometimes.
me both. Well, before we wrap up, we got to talk about this album because this is
Please.
really amazing. And thank you so much for your time. We've been talking for a lot longer than we were supposed to, but
I
I've
know,
had so
but
much
that's
fun.
I have a tendency. People will say, Noopy will talk. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, well, I've been known to do a 3-hour podcast before, so
Oh
it's
Lord, no,
nothing
I don't
strange
think
for
I
me.
can do that. I don't think I can do
Uh,
that.
but this album, the thing that fascinates me about this is music that even you hadn't heard.
True. I would say 99.9% of the cuts in here I had never heard. It goes back to the to her heritage as being raised Italian and kind of funny old Italian songs, but she actually wrote some of them, which is even funnier because
Mm.
I said, my mother wrote this, you know, Romeo the Iceman, da, 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 da. It's like one of those, and you go, oh my, I listened to that and I went, are you kidding?
I can't wait to hear that because that that sounds like something I'd love to hear her
But
do.
there are some cuts in here. If you're familiar with the movie Gypsy, for instance, I'll I she they were talking about dubbing Rosalind Russell's voice, and so they had her come in and sing two songs from Gypsy to see, because my mother always had kind of a grovel kind of voice,
Yeah.
and they thought it would blend in good with Rosalind Russell. Although Rosalind Russell's a good singer, but the powers that be in the film industry to say, oh, we're going to dub her voice,
Mhm.
and so they brought her in, and my mother loved the show Gypsy, just loved it. And she became friends with Ethel Merman, and they had a friendship forever. And they brought her in to sing two of the songs from Gypsy. She did not get the part,
Mhm.
but we found the recordings. We actually
Oh.
found the two things that they had recorded of her singing those songs. So those two are on the CD.
Mhm.
And then of course the one for my baby cut, and where it's 2:45, there's no one in the place except you and me, and she recorded that in the 50s, and women just didn't sing that.
Right. Yeah, because
And
that was a male song. Yeah.
the other thing that probably hit me the most was right after my father died. She was in a major depression, and she didn't want to work. And the John Rich, the director of Dick Van Dyke, came over and talked to her all night long and talked her into going back because she was going to quit the show. That was her first thought, because she said, I can't go out there and be funny.
Yeah.
And so he talked her into it. So let's finish off the last year, because they were only going to do 5 years anyway. And so, but she was in a major, major depression. And one day she got a call from Dean Martin, who had a show on at the time on NBC. And he said, I want you to come on my show and I want you to sing. And she said, Dean, I don't think I can do it. I really don't. I don't think I can do it. And Dean knew that everybody knew she was in this depression. So the whole showbiz community kind of, there were amazing groups of people at that time. And he said, no, you got to come on the show. I want you to come on the show and I want you to sing. And she said, I don't think I can sing. No, I'll be here. You sing whatever you want to sing. So she chose to sing Little Girl Blue. And she sang it. She sang the heck out of it with Dean in front of her. Dean said, I'll be right there. And he was. And the cut of Little Girl Blue is on this CD. And I heard it, and the tears just streamed down my face, because anybody that knows the story, she never sang it again. This is the only time she ever sang that song. And it rips your heart. If you have a heart, it'll rip you apart if you know the story. So I've kind of told people, because we didn't put it in the notes, but it's a very hard, it was a hard song for her to sing. Like I said, she never sung it again. And but it did help her get out, and it did bring her out, because she had to think to herself, I can still sing. And so I think when you hear that rendition of Little Girl Blue on this CD, you'll know exactly why I'm saying what I'm saying. Because
and was that like a turnaround for her? Was that the thing that kind of got her back on?
It did. It certainly helped. That, and I think Hollywood Squares. Mm-hmm. Hollywood Squares got her out. Dick Van Dyke Show had finished at this point.
Right.
And so that was over and done with. And she hadn't gone into pushing about doing any of the other shows, all of the sitcoms. There were 8 zillion sitcoms out at that time. Mm-hmm. And she really didn't want to work. She really did, which is odd for her, because she loved it so. But Dean pushed her into it, because they were friends from Vegas days. Those are Vegas days.
Yeah.
And her and Frank and Dean and everybody, and it was quite a group. And Dean said, I'll get her out. I'll do it. I'll get her out. And that's the kind of people that they were. A lot of people don't know that. Jerry Lewis, the same way. Wonderful guy. When my father was sick and in the hospital, people don't know that Jerry Lewis used to go and see him after hours.
Yeah.
And my father would say, Jerry's here, because my father's on every movie track that Jerry ever did. Jerry loved my father. And my father would say, yeah, Jerry was here last night. And Jerry'd sit there and crack jokes and make him laugh, try to make him feel good. These are things that people don't know about these people. They go, oh, he was a pain. He was this, he was that, blah, blah, blah.
Well, yeah, but we always talk about the things that are, sensational, the things that are controversial, because that's what we think grabs
That's what they want to hear.
I'd rather hear stories like this. I'd rather know what what a person really was, instead of just the bad boy image, or whatever controversial thing. I want to know that they were good people. I want to know that when I watch a Jerry Lewis movie, or when I think about all the hours I spent watching his telethons, growing
Me
up,
too. Me too.
um, I want to know that it wasn't a stunt for his
It
to
wasn't.
grow his career, that it was that he was really that genuine. That's why we need stories like that.
My mother did his telethon one year, and I went with her. We flew into Vegas, and the hands-on that Jerry Lewis had on that telethon, I saw. Most did not. He wanted reports where it was doing good, where it was doing bad, where is this, and it was the most professionally run thing I had ever seen. It was like a machine.
Mhm.
And he was so genuine about it, and people thought, he's putting it on, he's doing this. No, he wasn't. He was very, after my father passed away, Jerry was just devastated. He didn't want to talk to anybody for like 2 or 3 days. He was so upset.
Mhm.
And my mother knew that Jerry was into photography, again with cameras and all that. And after my father passed away, my father had all these cameras, and I remember her and I going to Jerry's office and giving him all the cameras, and Jerry just loved it.
Oh yeah.
Jerry was, they all thought, he's this, he's that. Jerry Lewis was an extremely talented man. He was the first one to put a video camera on a movie camera so that he could see the scene immediately.
Wow.
He was the first one to put a video camera. It came to him because he was always directing his own films, if you look back on him. And it was his idea. He said, because he's in the scene.
Right.
So he said, I'm going to put a video camera here so I can see what the heck I'm doing here, and if it's right.
Mm-hmm.
The best interview I ever saw with Jerry Lewis was with Jerry Seinfeld on the Coffee with Celebrities or something on
Coffee and Cars.
Coffee and Cars, Netflix, whatever it was, because Seinfeld knew everything that Jerry had done, and Jerry loved that because, there's a great character actress named Kathleen Freeman. She was in every Jerry Lewis movie, every one of them. And Jerry Seinfeld's asked him, he says, why did you use Kathleen Freeman in every movie? And Lewis looks at him and said, because she's Kathleen Freeman.
Yeah, if you can get her, you get her,
And he said, she's one of the best comedic actresses out there.
I'll tell you, he had a pretty big impact on me when I was growing up too. I would watch him do those telethons. And I remember one year in particular, I don't know what happened. It might have just been that he was so exhausted by the end of it, but I actually felt guilty going to bed when that man was up for 3 days raising money. I was probably 8 or 9 years old.
I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Because I would sit there and I'd lay in bed and I'd go, I can't sleep. I gotta watch. I can't sleep. I gotta watch.
Of course, for us, it meant the end of summer because it was the day after the telethon was over that we went back to school.
Yeah, it was Labor Day. Sure.
Yeah, I hated when it was over because that meant my summer was done. But one year, my brother and I worked at the post office sorting the giant bags of mail that would come in for people sending in their donations, because it was all done, by check and pledges back then.
Sure.
Yeah, really big impact on me. And for your mom, of course, she loved doing Hollywood Squares. How can life be depressing when you're sitting next to Paul Lynde for 8 hours a day?
She was above Paul.
That's right. She was in the top center.
Yeah, it became the thing was Rose Marie to block. Mm-hmm. That was the expression, because she was right in the area where she would have to be blocked.
Right.
And she loved squares. She came in and one day she goes, Ethel Merman's in town. Why don't we put her on Squares? And they went, okay, we'll book her. Ethel Merman did Hollywood Squares, for God's sake. So And they always shared like she was sharing a dressing room with Phyllis Diller one time. She was sharing a dressing room, depending on who they had. And they would do, I think they would do three shows, then break for dinner. A couple times I went down there to meet him because it was always catered. It was great.
Oh yeah.
And Paul had a couple of drinks during dinner, so the next two shows were pretty good. And Paul was over at the house numerous times. Funniest guy in the world, honest to God. He could say hello to me and I'd start laughing. So
and one of the most quick-witted people I've ever seen.
Unbelievable wit, and just a fabulous, so funny, so funny. And in those days, everybody had dinner parties. It wasn't a thing where you had to have dinner in the house, and of course, being part Italian, my mother cooked for days. And it was always a dinner party. So we had, like Betty and Alan Ludden, Betty came over, Betty White, and all that. And we had some great dinner parties because my mother loved to entertain. She loved the cooking because that's how she was raised, and the whole bit. And it was a great time. And then Squares really helped her a lot. And after she put in a couple of years of Squares, that was when she came out of it, and she became her. And that's when she said, okay. And she would call up her agent, I'm not working this week, get me a job. Or she'd call up Aaron Spelling and say, Aaron, I'm not working next week. And next week she'd have a Love Boat. I'm not
I love
kidding.
that go-getter attitude, though. I mean, normally people just, well, I'm paying my agent to do that. And
oh God, no. Oh Lord, no. She if she wasn't working for a week, it drove her nuts. It was like, no, I gotta work. But she also loved it. She loved it. And when she was doing Four Girls Four, with Margaret Whiting and Helen O'Connell and Rosemary Clooney on the road, I watched her one night backstage, and I watched her, and the audience was going crazy. She was at the end of her act, and she's bowing and all that stuff. And I'm looking at her, and it really hit me then. I said, she really loves this. You could see it in her eyes. You could see it in her face. It was like, this is it. This is the epitome of, and it just was a weird thing because all the years that I've been through seeing her perform and all that, it hit me that night when I saw that expression on her face and her looking at that audience.
Well, thank you, wow, Dean Martin, for getting things back on track.
He did. These were wonderful people, and for all the baloney that was said about him and all that kind of stuff, these were good people that really cared about each other. And
they're all Italian family-oriented people.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and we were in Vegas one time. Dean was actually performing, and she had sent back, she goes, it's Noopie's birthday. And in the middle of his act, he said, Noopie. And he sang happy birthday to me. Aww. I mean, he just looked at me and sang happy birthday to me. And we went backstage. There was another show, and Jimmy Durante was playing. We went backstage, and they brought a cake, and I had a birthday cake with Jimmy Durante. And wow. My mother was one of the very few that could do a good impression of Jimmy Durante. But anyway, most of these songs that are on there are songs that she sang when she was singing in the 50s, and then we go to the 60s. There are some songs on there that are from the Dick Van Dyke Show, when she actually performed on there, because the fans, which is why we did this, we did it for the fans. Sure. Every time a Dick Van Dyke Show would show when she sang, her Facebook page exploded. Is there any way we can get more of her singing? Is there any way we can hear more of her singing? And it just, so finally we just came to the conclusion that this would be the year that we would do this. And we went through countless of tapes, cassettes, transcripts, reel to reels. It's crazy.
Well, being that the magnetic tapes were so old, did you have any problem with quality or degradation of the tape?
Well, yeah, we had to, a couple of them we had to clear up, sure,
Yeah.
because of the age, alone. I mean, literally, when we were going through film of all these old film things for the documentary, we opened up one film can and it exploded because of the nitrate.
Wow.
I mean, it went poof, it was red. I mean,
Holy
we all went,
cow.
whoa.
And then
mean,
you go to open the next one and you're like,
yeah, oh no, it's like maybe we should go outside,
yeah.
But because some of these films were old and just weren't, in a vault somewhere being taken
Right.
care of at a certain temperature. But
Right.
we got very lucky with most of the, yeah, you might hear a little couple of scratches on some of these things, but
Sure.
not bad
Good.
considering. But and of course all of the stuff from Dick Van Dyke is still, as a matter of fact, on her Facebook page, somebody said, is there going to be any cuts from the Dick Van Dyke show? I love the way she sang Cotton Fields. I love the way she sang, and so yes, they're on there. Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
it's
this is
exciting.
exciting. It is. And I want to thank you and everyone involved for putting in all this effort to make it happen and,
Well, thank you.
Give people something that they really obviously want and should have. I'm looking so forward to hearing it. So the CD comes out August 15th to correspond with her birthday.
It actually comes out August 11th. We're going to celebrate her birthday on the 15th with a streaming on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
On her YouTube channel, which is called Hold the Roses, which is all one word, because that's the name of her book.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go to her webpage, www.missrosemarie.com, and all the links are there for whatever you want to do. There's a deluxe edition on the CD, and then you can pre-order it right now on Amazon if you want.
Perfect. And I will have all those links in the show notes as always to make it easier for you guys, because
That'd be great.
why wouldn't I do that? It'd just be silly.
No, no. I enjoyed talking to you.
You too. And I want to know now, when does your book come out? Because you've had quite a colorful and interesting life.
I was asked that this morning. I swear to you. I was talking to someone who is a huge fan of my mother's, knew everything she ever did.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that you should re-release her book, but you write a 50-page thing. He said, because you have the greatest stories in the world. And he said, and they would really, the fans would really enjoy that. I said, well, that's an interesting thing. I said, I've been told I should write a book. Everybody has said I should write a book, but I mean,
you're just having birthday cake with Jimmy Durante. I mean, it for you, this was just your life, but for people outside of the Hollywood world, it's fascinating stuff. And it's stuff that we don't hear news stories about these people anymore. So
yeah. And that's sad because, there are people that don't know who my mother was, don't have a clue out there. And that's sad. But I mean, there was a nurse that was taking care of her in the hospital at one time. And I said, do you know who she is? And the nurse said, no, but they tell me she's an actress. And I said, no, that's not it. And so I gave her the web page. Let me get rid of this phone. So anyway, so I gave her the web page and she went and looked it up. She got all excited because she thought that my mother was on Wikipedia. And I said,
that's how you know you've made it.
And she goes, she's on Wikipedia. That's all she kept saying to me. She's on Wikipedia. And I'm looking going, are you kidding me?
Wow.
She looked at all this stuff and she goes, oh, she's on Wikipedia and she's on Google. And I went, okay, so the world's in serious trouble now, and this is a nurse. Okay, fine.
Right. Yeah.
But it's like, oh my God. So yeah, there's a whole group out there that are young, and I think to myself, well, maybe I should just say that, she knew Taylor Swift personally.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Now, if you can
That
get
was the
that,
only thing that came into my head.
if you
She
can get,
actually knew Taylor Swift at one point.
if you can get Taylor redoing one of her songs, and then you do the thing where they merge the voices together and she sings with your mom.
Oh my God, can you
Guarantee.
imagine?
Oh, the world would be on its butt. I guarantee you that.
Can you imagine?
Now I'm sad that hasn't happened.
Well, see, there you go.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate all the extra time that you were so generously giving me.
No problem.
So much fun talking to you. Hang on for me for one more moment, if you would, because I have a suggestion about your book. And and I will see you guys on the next episode of the Haskincast podcast. In the meantime, check the links in the show notes, folks. This is a CD that you do not want to miss. And real quick, the documentary. So where is that available? Is that part of the CD package? Tell me about that.
Oh, you can get the documentary on Amazon. If you're Amazon Prime, you can view it for nothing. It's free. Mm-hmm. Or you can buy it, which has all the extras, which has Carl Reiner on there and Dick Van Dyke on there. And you can buy it, but I was just told that Amazon's running low on people buying it. So I think they only have like 6 or 7 left. So
wow.
If you want to buy the CD, and I have friends that have bought it that, oh my God, they've run the thing 10, 15 times. And I said, what? And everybody watches it at least twice, at least. And they said and I have a friend that said, every time I watch it, I find something a little bit different. I find something that I didn't know before.
Yeah. Well,
so yes, it's on Amazon right now. You can get it right now, or you can watch it for nothing.
Well, when you're bombarded with so much information, you do tend to, like, you're focusing on something you just heard and you miss the next thing. So yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. But that also shows how much it means to them, how much they care, and how much it's touching their heart to see that, because they want to hear every little bit. She
said to me, she said, whenever somebody comes over and I cook dinner, it's dinner and then the movie. Mm-hmm. I said, are you kidding? She said, I'm dead serious. She said, I've probably seen it 10 to 15 times. Wow. And she said, I never get tired of it, ever. It's not just because it's me. Trust me. Mm-hmm. The film is a very good film, and it is a love story. It's a history of the business. And if you have any interest in show business at all, puts you right. And then it just takes you on a ride that you go, holy Toledo. And it started when she was performing at 3.
Well, and I will have the link to that in the show notes as well, especially for you Prime people that can watch it without the worry of all the DVDs being gone before you get there. But grab a DVD, because you're going to want to see those extras that you're not going to get on Prime. Well, Noopy, thank you so much. I'm so excited about all this. This show will air in plenty of time for people to watch the YouTube event on the 15th. So guys, check out that link. Thank you guys for joining me for another episode of the show. We'll see you. Well, I think I have another bonus episode coming out tomorrow. So there you go. And I'll just say, as a precursor for tomorrow's episode, if you guys are concerned or worried or anything about this whole AI thing, we're going to be digging into that, because that is a whole can of worms that I usually don't do political or anything on the show, but I think this needs to be discussed. So tune in tomorrow and go get that DVD. We'll see you guys. Cheers.